Hello and welcome to section 2 of articulation and resonance. In this section, we are going to have a quick review of the English vowels and consonants, and we'll speak what about a spectrographic analysis is and the spectrogram or spectrography analysis. And then we'll speak about how individual sounds resonate in the vocal tract and general pitch levels or general resonant frequency levels of English sounds. So spectrography is an instrumental analysis of sound that identifies frequency, number one, amplitude, and duration of the sound. When you say duration of the sound, it is the actual live duration of the sound in seconds. So the information is displayed on a spectrogram, and the spectrogram, as shows here, has the frequencies on the vertical axis from 0 to 8,000, because all human speech sounds fall within that range. Then on the horizontal axis, you are going to have the formants here plotted, these dark bands of energy that represent all the compressions in the wave. And then you also have the duration of the sound. So the width of the band from the beginning to the end tells you how many seconds the sound took to make. And you have examples here of the E, U, and Ah, and we discussed these examples at length in class. So here's, for example, F1 for E, which is around 300, F2, which is close to 2500, and F3 about 3200. And you keep, going. So vowels have distinct formats that we use so that we can measure their resonant frequency in the vocal tract. You can compare the U with 270, approximately 270 hertz. It is quite low for F1, and then F2 comes after about 870, and then you go up to the other frequencies. You could also see Ah, beginning at 900 and moving up. So these bands of energy are called formats, and as I explained repeatedly, the first three are the most important because they are the loudest and the most amplified. The fourth is also important, especially when we look for very minute differences between sounds. There are two types of spectrograms. One is called the narrowband spectrogram, and one is called the wideband spectrogram. It depends on the kind of analysis that we are looking for. The narrowband has a very narrow range that can be amplified. So, for example, between 45 hertz and 50 hertz. So if it is, say, for example, the resonant frequency of a given vocal tract is 500 hertz, then you take the bandwidth, which is 50, and you divide it, put 25 before the 500, that will be 475, and then 25 after or above the 500, that will be 525, and then you say between any sound that is between 475 hertz and 525 will be amplified, and that range is your band width. So if you measure the distance between 475 and 525, then that distance is going to be 50 hertz. So that is a restricted range, and the purpose is to identify the harmonic structures of the vocal folds themselves. So that is the fundamental frequency of the vocal folds and the individual harmonics that they produce. So then we use the narrowband spectrogram looks for the harmonic, each harmonic and the vocal fold vibration. It looks at each harmonic separately. So it wants to identify specific vibration patterns of the vocal folds of the source. The wideband spectrogram focuses on the vocal tract. Remember, we have source and filter. So the filter is the vocal tract. And this shows the vowel formants and the vocal tract function. And the wideband spectrography also uses a filter that is a wideband filter that's between 300 and 500 hertz. So then it detects and adds up multiple frequencies, multiple harmonics that show up in the vocal tract itself as formants. So again, one looks at the vibration of the air patterns in the column of the vocal tract, and the other one, which is the narrowband, looks for the harmonic frequencies of the vocal folds themselves. Now let's review just the vowels quickly, and then we come and describe. In order to describe any vowel, you have 4 criteria. 2 of them have to do with the tongue. All vowels, of course, are produced as vibrations of the vocal folds. All vowels are the product of pure tones, because there is minimal or no obstruction throughout the vocal tract, as you say ah or e or oo or any of the other vowels. So 2 criteria when you describe have to do with the tongue. One is tongue advancement. How far is the tongue? You know, is it back? Is it in the center of the mouth? Is it front? And then we speak about tongue height. Is the tongue low? Is it in the middle? Or is it high in the oral cavity? So these 2 things. And then we look at the degree of muscular tension. We say, is the sound tense or lax? Tense means it engages the muscles. It makes them work for a longer duration. And lax means it makes the muscles work for a shorter duration. Some linguists used to call lax short sound, short vowels, and tense long vowels. But because we are looking at that as scientists, from the perspective of speech and hearing science, we describe that in terms of muscular tension and aerodynamics and so on. So it is important that we say tense or lax. So a sound that is longer is going to require more muscular tension. For example, when you say ooh, as in pool, that is a tense sound. When you say shorten that ooh into oh, so you say pull, and that becomes a lax sound. And then the last criterion is lip rounding. We simply just make it simple and say, is the sound rounded or is it not rounded? If it is not, the lips are protruded and rounded, then you certainly wouldn't call the sound rounded. Like when you say ah, put your fingers around your lips, the corners of your lips, and say ah, there's no rounding. However, if you say ooh, you feel the lips protruding out and being rounded, ooh or oh. And then, so these are the 4 criteria that we use to describe all English vowels. In the English language, especially the American Standard English, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 vowels. This one in the bottom, which is low center, that is not a common American sound. It is still produced by British speakers, but not necessarily by American speakers that much. So let's look here and describe these sounds. This is called the quadrilateral, and we explained in class what it means. and it is the space available in the oral cavity, in the oral cavity particularly. So from the lips here and to the back, and when you go down, from the floor of the mouth to the back of the oral cavity. So the top segment describes how high the tongue is in the vocal tract, like how high does the tongue dorsum or tongue tip reach, and the middle is the middle of the vocal tract, and low is the kind of very low in the bottom of the vocal tract. And then you describe, is it front, is it in the center, or is it back? So let's look at the two sounds here that are front and high. And both of them, you describe them. As long as they are between these two lines, we just describe them simply as high and describe them simply as front. So the front are all these sounds in this column. E as in feet, or feed, or feel, and I as in fill. So fill, short, tense, lax, and then feel, that is the tense one. So E is a high front, tense, unrounded vowel. Listen to this one then. The I. It's also high front and then unrounded, and the only difference is it is lax. So these two sounds are similar in everything except that one is tense, one is lax. Let's go down. This one is the A, as in when you say the days of the week commonly, this sound, as it is transcribed here, it comes in unstressed syllables, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So you notice in the end, yes, we describe it as tense, but it is not as tense as when we make it into a diphthong. A diphthong is A, and this sound will be A. And the diphthong comes always in single syllable words, or words that have more than one syllable, but the A comes in a stressed syllable, the A with as a diphthong, this sound and this together, and we'll describe this more. So it is important to know that this symbol here, the A, comes in unstressed syllables, even though itself we describe it as a stressed sound. So then the epsilon is a little bit lower in this range, but we still describe it as a mid and front vowel, and it is lax and it is not rounded. So the epsilon, the words is for the sound as in head, or as in bed, or for example, and light, and light, or epsilon. So as in bed or head or red. Then the as in cat. This sound is also lax. It is low and front, and lax and unrounded. Again, as in cat, can, camera. So and then we move on to the central vowels. Central means in the center of the vocal tract, as compared to the front or back. You have the schwa, which is the weakest English sound. It has the least energy when you produce it, and the vocal tract is almost close to neutral. This is why it is used as the basis for measuring vocal tract resonance, which is, if you have a vocal tract of 17 centimeters, you are going to get about a resonance of about 500 hertz. So you find it always in weak syllables, syllables that are not stressed. Remember, you do not describe a vowel as a stressed or unstressed. You describe a vowel as tense or lax. You describe a syllable as stressed or unstressed. A stressed syllable is made stressed because it has a tense vowel. And a unstressed syllable is called unstressed because it has an unstressed vowel. And these are generalizations, but you will find irregularities once in a while. So the schwa comes in words as in above, alone. So the beginning of that at the beginning is a syllable by itself, but it's kind of neglected and weak. Say alone, alone, above, a tone. So again, it comes in, and the end of words sometimes is say Clara, Clara. For example, hamburger, no, Clara. That at the end is a schwa. So then we have what is called the tense schwa. And this is as in the word bird. Typically IR, spelling letter I and R, they make this word as in words like bird. Sometimes UR as in cure, or heard. So it takes different forms of spelling, but it is the hard schwa sound, or the tense schwa sound. The next one below it is the unstressed schwa, and it usually, one of the best examples are the final ER in words, like in platter, carpenter, butter, later. So at the end is that sound that is the unstressed schwa. And then sometimes this sound is called the caret sound, sometimes it's called the wedge sound. It's the as in mud, ad, hug. So fudge, So this sound is unstressed. So let's look here. All of these three sounds, central, they only have a single sound that is tense, and the rest are lax. So let's describe them. The schwa is a mid, central, unrounded, lax vowel. Let's describe this one. You will find that they are the same. For this reason, we are going to kind of modify them a little bit. The is mid, and then also central, and then it is lax, and it is unrounded. So how do you differentiate between the and the So the difference, you describe this one, as you could see, it is lower, and some research they actually put it in the low row, but it is here for most speakers. So we say it's a mid, low central, mid, low central, and lax, unrounded. You could describe the schwa as mid, high central, and then unrounded, and then lax, just to differentiate between them. And then the schwa will be mid, central, tense, and actually watch, rounded. So mid, central, tense, and rounded. The mid, central, lax, and rounded as well. So the only difference between these two is that the is tense and the is lax. Now look at the back vowels, all of these 5. And the 5 of them, most of them are rounded except for one, the at the end. So oo is a high back, tense, rounded. Oo. Oh, everything except that oo is lax. High, back, lax, rounded. O, as in Melrose, that sound, as it is, we use it to transcribe words that have more than one syllable, and the O, the O comes in unstressed and the unstressed syllable, as in fructose, for example, fructose. So the toes at the end, that's a syllable that's unstressed, and then you can use O to describe. However, if you have a one-syllable word like rose, then there's a lot of stress here. The one-syllable words are stressed by nature. They have a primary stress. So this way you use a diphthong, as we describe later, O and O. O. Say rose. O. So the O is a mid-back and mid-back, tense, rounded. You will notice that this is the same description, so we are going to find a way to differentiate between them. O, as in law. This one is not very common in American English because it is placed constantly by the ah. So people say law. It's law, instead of law. They say thought instead of thought. So that one is exaggerated, is more, is kind of, rounded and exaggerated. But it's commonly in American English, it is replaced by ah. So, the O is mid, back, tense, and rounded. So, it is the same description as the O, as we see. However, because one is very high in that range and one is low, we should differentiate between them. Each English sound has to be unique. And when you describe the sound and say, give me a mid-high back, tense, rounded vowel, I should only find the only sound that matches will be that. So for this reason, we just, differentiate them. So this one is mid, low back, rounded, and tense. And then the ah, the ah is a sound where when you say it, doctors and health professionals like you to say ah so that you can bring the tongue down and back so that your oral cavity will be the largest it can be. And they can see the back of your throat clearly. They can see your facial pillars when you say ah. So, and this is the lowest back sound in the English language. And it is low back, tense, and unrounded. As you say car, jar, star. So now these are all the vowels in English, 14 of them. And I'd like you to be able to use these 4 criteria again to describe, as I described here, each one of them. So here's a summary. The tense vowels include E as in feet, A as in Sunday, Monday, U as in school, as in bird, O as in Melrose, or fructose, O as in thought, and A as in car, or as in thought. If you choose to say it instead of thought, you say thought. So these tense vowels, 7 of them, there are also 7 lax vowels. I expect you to know each one, to be able to list all of the 7 and give me examples of each one of these. For examples where, of words that have them. So tense vowels involve more extreme articulations because they take longer time to pronounce and require muscular tension. They have a longer duration, and they can occur in open syllables. An open syllable is a consonant and vowel. It doesn't end with a consonant. Like when we say pa, they can occur. Ma, they can occur at the end of an open syllable. They may be diphthongized. These sounds, you can make them into a diphthong. We'll describe diphthongs in the next slide. So you say a, as in may, day, stay, and o, as in rose. So, and then the lax vowels, they have less extreme articulatory postures. They are short in duration, and they occur mostly in closed syllables, like say ma when you say mom. So when you say, for example, bad, if you take the d out, ba, you don't have an English sound, an English word or syllable that ends like that. But so, as again, they occur in syllables that end with a consonant all the time. And these are again as in kit, and as in epsilon, as in head, and as in bug, and as in butter, o as in book, a as in cat, and the schwa as in alone. Now the diphthongs are 5 in English, and they are a blend of 2 distinct vowels, and you start with one and switch midstream into the other, so you blend the 2 vowels. So the first one is I, and the second as in I, and then or my, and then oi, as in toy, or soy, or broil, oil, and then ow, as in cow, a cow, or now, or bow, a as in may or hay, and o as in rose. So all of them, they come in individual, they come in like these 4, they come in syllables that are stress syllables. So you begin with one and switch into the other midstream. The first vowel usually is the on-glide, and the second, like this, oi. The o here is the on-glide, and the I is the off-glide. Ow, the a here is on-glide, and o is off-glide. And so that's the end point. And you can see here on the spectrogram how the vocal tract changes resonance after, midstream, as you move from a to e to I and a to u, because each one has a different harmonic frequency, different resonant frequency. However, you need to know that sounds are influenced by the sounds that come before them and by the sounds that come after them. They, in other words, are affected by the environment in which they occur. So, for example, because the I is a low frequency sound, is about 300 or even a little bit lower. The is 900 or so. So, however, when you blend them together, you make the shorter and the E shorter, and then you end up also in preparation of the E before, in anticipation of it, you make the lower as well. It's also, you notice it in nasal sounds, like Um, for example, E. It is E by itself is not nasalized. But if you say E and follow it with an M, or bring an M before it, then that becomes nasalized. So E, we say im. There's no word like that. But if you say im, the E will be nasalized. Or if you say I'm, the vowel will be nasalized. Or me, so E becomes nasalized because of the M coming before it. So you can see how, the resonant frequencies arise as they come close to the E for the F1 and F2, and how they go down for the U, because U is lower than A, for example. For consonants, there are two different categories. A first category is called resonant consonants. Second one are called non-resonant consonants. Sometimes in linguistics, not in speech language hearing, sometimes they may call them sonorants, and they call the other ones non-sonorants. We just are going to stick with resonant sounds and non-resonant sounds because we are speaking about speech and hearing science, and we want to connect that and discuss it within the context of speech and hearing. So, resonant sounds are 7 sounds. All of them are very close to vowels. They have minimal obstruction or no obstruction. You can continue making them, and they always require vocal fold vibration. So, because there's no obstruction, particular obstruction, they tend to resonate throughout the vocal tract, either from the vocal folds to the end of the nasal cavity, vocal folds to the end of the oral cavity, or vocal folds to the, both nasal and oral cavities. So they resonate the entire vocal tract. They have periodic or vocal fold vibration, and they are characterized by formant frequencies. They also have formant frequencies, just like the consonants. For non-resonants, they primarily occur in front of a point of constriction. They all have some kind of constriction. That constriction could be complete or could be partial. Complete, like if you say a sound like k, it shuts down the airway, shuts down the entire vocal tract. And resonance occurs. So you have that obstruction when you say k, k. Resonance occurs in front of the obstruction, between the obstruction and the lips. So, and the back is not engaged in resonance. So that is a major difference between non-resonant sounds and resonant sounds. Non-resonant sounds do not, resonate throughout the vocal tract, while resonant sounds resonate throughout the vocal tract. The non-resonant sounds have they could be either a combination of vocal fold vibration and aperiodic tones produced in the oral cavity, or they could be completely made out of oral cavity noises or oral cavity sounds, and they might not have voicing. So there are two categories of them. The resonant consonants include the nasal sounds, and the liquids, which are l, r, and the glides, which are y, w. And we described each one. We looked at each one in class, but if you take I'll give you an example, describe, some of them here. So, you say, is a, first voiced or voiceless. Let's say voiced, all of them are voiced. Voiced, bilabial, nasal. Ooh is voiced, and then alveolar, and then liquid. Yeah, voiced, and then palatal, and then glide. W, voiced, and this one has two placements. It's the only sound in English with two placements. W is voiced, bilabial, velar, glide. And then you go to the non-resonant sounds. These come in 3 categories and 2 categories. The first 2 are the major categories. The second category is a combination of stops and fricatives. So let's go and see what they look like. Here is a chart. You can use it to describe, consonants. When you describe consonants, you use 3 criteria. First, you say if the sound is voiced or voiceless. Second, you say where is the sound produced. And the third is manner. What does it sound like when you say it? So there are many charts that describe them different ways. For example, voicing here is described, next to the sound. And then manner, stopping, in terms of stopping. Manner, what the sound is like. You have stops, fricatives, affricates. And the other ones here are sonorant sounds or resonant sounds are listed here. Let's look at the other chart. And then the placement is on top. Look at this chart. This is another one. The shading means voicing, and the lack of shading means voiceless. That the sound is now voiced. So on top, you are going to always find the place of articulation. On the side here, you will find the manner of articulation. And again, the shading or lack of shading tells you the voicing. Let's look at the 3 categories. Here are stops, and then fricatives, and then affricates, and everything below, we discussed, all of this. So the stops are arranged, and all the other sounds are arranged in what is known as cognate pairs. A cognate pair is a pair of consonants that have the same placement and they have the same manner, but they disagree in voicing. Only in voicing. For this reason, you call them cognates or cognate pairs. So let's look at the p. The p is a first voiced or voiceless. It is a voiceless. And then you go up and say bilabial and go down and say stop. Voiceless, bilabial, stop. The b is exactly the same except that the b is voiced. Then you go from back to front, and then front to back in the oral cavity. You find the t and d when you say tight and dime. T is voiceless, alveolar, stop, because the tongue tip contacts the alveolar ridge. So voiceless, alveolar, and then stop. And then d is the same except that it is voiced. Then the next pair is the k and the g. K is voiceless, and then you say velar, and then stop. And g, the same except that it is voiced. And then the like a question mark, that is the glottal stop, as when you say ka and ba al. So that stopping, you block shut the airway with the vocal folds, and you do not vibrate the vocal folds. You open them after, immediately just go and go away. So that is the glottal stop. So it will be voiceless and then glottal stop. So the stops are three cognate pairs and a single. So make sure to be able to understand and to describe each one clearly using the 3 words that we described, and make sure to start with voicing, move on to placement, and then move on to manner. It's like a triangle. You start with voicing, go up, and then go to the left. The fricative category is the largest of them. It has 9 sounds in all. It has 4 pairs, 4 cognate pairs, and a single. So, and we trace that from the front and then go to the back, so that if you do that, you'll remember all of them. Because be prepared to be asked to answer a question that says, list all the stops, list all the fricatives, list all the affricates, give examples of each. So the first is as in fun, and that sound is voiceless, and then labiodental, and then fricative. Labiodental, your lower lip contacts the upper teeth, front teeth. And then that is the same in everything except that the v is voiced while the f is not, or the f is voiceless. And then you have the th. Th as in math. Th. It's voiceless, and then interdental and fricative. I tell you that this name, this placement label, interdental, is also, you can use lingua dental, tongue, teeth. So both of these are used to describe the same 2 sounds, and I'd like you to know in case you encounter a different name somewhere. So, and then the is the same as in them, feather, father. That is a voice, voiced, interdental or voiced, lingua dental, fricative, and then s as in Sam. That's a voiceless, alveolar, fricative, and then z, which is the same except that it's voiced, and then the sh as in shy. That's a voiceless. You can say it has 3 labels, either alveopalatal, like between the alveolar ridge and the palate, the beginning of the hard palate, or you can describe it as post-alveolar, right behind the alveolar ridge, or simply as palatal. And the majority just describes them as palatal, because look here, what you see. So when you come to the palatal area, you find the sh and zh, and you find the ch and j. So it doesn't make a big difference for us, but I just wanted you to be aware that these have 3 different names, either alveopalatal or post-alveolar, or simply just palatal. So these are 4 cognate pairs, and then you have the h as in hand. This is a voiceless, and then glottal and fricative. Then out of the stops and fricatives, you get make 2 sounds as a combination out of these 2. So you take the t, combine it with the sh, and that's gonna make the ch, as in chair or catch, match. So it is t and sh. And then you take the d, combine it with the zh, and you make this sound, j, as in page or fudge, judge. So that is the sound. So these 2 sounds are called affricate sounds. Affricate. Make sure to spell it right. A-F-F-R-I-C-A-T-E. Affricate sounds. If you describe a sound and give me a different word, it will not be recognized. You must write it correctly, because if you don't, you are going to create a whole different category that I will say that category does not exist. sounds, I mean, we did this before, so I don't have to go through the other ones. So the nasal sounds, in order to produce them, you have to reroute the vowels, the air from the oral cavity to the nasal cavity. So you must have, see, this is the front of the mouth, this is the velum, this is the posterior pharyngeal wall. And when you say ah, your velum is going to rise and close against the posterior pharyngeal wall. Now when you say you need the air to go through your nose, so the velum must be down. The space between the velum and the posterior pharyngeal wall is called the velopharyngeal port. The velopharyngeal port. That's a very important concept. So the velopharyngeal port is open, and the airstream is obstructed within the OC, which is oral cavity, and then the air just gets rerouted, exits through the nasal cavity, and goes to exit out of the nose. So that results in what is known as a nasal murmur or anti-resonance. Nasal murmur is a combination of nasal formants and antiformants. And the antiformants are weak bands of energy that result from damping of the sound as the sound goes through the nasal cavity. So why this explains, as I mentioned in class, why antiformants occur in the nasal cavity. First reason, when you say, for example, you close the lips, the air goes up, some of the air goes to the oral cavity, and then some of the air keeps going up because the nasal port is open. And then the air that goes into the oral cavity bounces back and then goes back up into the nasal cavity. So that redirection of the air from the oral cavity to the nasal cavity dampens, it weakens the energy and the wave. So the second reason is that the nasal cavity structures by nature cause further dampening of the tones. The nasal conchae, these shelves and mucus and different things that are in the nasal cavity are going to absorb some of the sound energy, thus causing more damping. And then the nasal cavity itself acts as a stop band filter. It attenuates frequencies within the cut-off points. In addition to that, all the air, all the tones that are being made have to exit out of two little nares that are way, way much smaller than the oral cavity. And that, of course, is going to decrease the energy further. So these are the reasons why antiformants occur in the nasal cavity. And I'm going to show you what they look like, what antiformants look like. See, these are vertical bars that are not closely, adjacent to each other. And that shows you that the energy is not very intense. Antiformants also occur in the production of the L and R, as we will see. So, starting the antiformants, when you say you will find that they are low frequency when you say because now the vocal tract, the entire vocal tract, the pharynx is engaged completely, the oral cavity, all of it is engaged, the nasal cavity is engaged. You have a huge vocal tract resonating. So that makes, by necessity, it makes the frequency low. And then once you say your tongue goes near the alveolar ridge, and now you took out this area out of the cavity. So say the air bounces back here and goes. So that makes the frequency rise when you say because you have made the vocal tract smaller. And when you say the vocal tract from here is blocked. Nothing is going out here. And then all of this is active, and that makes the space less. That raises the frequency, the harmonic frequency to 3000. So again, understand that these differences are due to the amount of space available as you make these sounds. So these are like the formant value. These are just the vocal tract resonances themselves, and the nasal formant, antiformants. The nasal formant values themselves range from 250 to 300. So you could see that the reason is that the entire vocal tract is, really, the whole thing is engaged, and that makes them very, very low frequency. So again, these are antiformant values, and then these are formant, actual formant values. Liquids and glides, they are characterized by a limited articulatory constriction, and this is why sometimes, the glides, for example, sometimes are called half vowels or semi-vowels. They are limited, they have limited articulatory constriction, and the airflow is neither completely laminar nor completely turbulent. So they are extremely short in duration, and the formant transitions that are farther than, the formant transitions are faster than for vowels. Let's see. The y is, when you make it, you basically go e and then e, as in yes, e, yes. So it begins with the e or a, and for this reason it has high front tongue position, and the lips are retracted just like the e, and the formant vowels are very, very similar to the e. So it has a low F1, it has a high F2. And formant transitions, like the movement from one formant to the next, they are different depending on the context and what comes before and what comes after. The w is very similar to the u, because you start to say u and then w. So it is a high back tongue position, u, the tongue rises and goes back in the oral cavity, rounded lips, and formant values are very, very similar to the u. So they like u, the w is going to have low F1 and relatively low F2. Formant transitions, again, are going to depend on what comes after what comes before. So you can see when I say, for example, ah, ah. So you start with 900, and as you approach the E, you dip down because E is 300, and then move again to ah, you rise gradually to 900. Ah, yeah. And when you put E and E together, you basically notice no difference. They are, basically very low, except for that little, when you say E, yeah. But this one is E. So you notice it is almost like going from one to the other. Like from E to E. Awa. Ah. It starts as higher, and then as you approach U, which is 300 or 270, then you start to transition down, go down to the U, and then ah, you rise again, awa. This one is iwi. So this shows you the transition as you go from one to the other. L and they are similar in formant values. The tongue tip rises towards the alveolar ridge, and especially for the L particularly. And you have the superior longitudinal muscle active to lift up the tongue tip. And L has both formants and antiformants as well due to the obstruction. So you say L, and so the air hits and then goes around. So F1 for L is about 360, and F2 is around 1300, F3 is about 2700. So again, variations do occur depending on the phonetic context. The L is very similar. There's no tongue tip contact with the alveolar ridge. Say it, What happens is that the tongue, so the sides of the tongue lift up and contact the hard palate, and then the tongue tip is close. It's across from the palate, between the alveolar ridge and palate, but it's not contacting, and the air just goes out with the tongue being curved and made like a spoon, and the air hits and then goes through between the tongue tip and the beginning of the hard palate. We call it retroflexed because the tongue just is retroflexed back and shaped like a spoon, and it is, at least as far as American English, it has labial rounding. So F1, F2, F3 for are very similar to those for the L sound. And it is, of course, like any other sound, is influenced by what comes before, what comes after. So these are different ways to look at the frequencies. And say ra, ra. You could see the transition from to to again. Re. You can see now how the frequency for is low. So you dip down as you approach it, and then you go up again as you go from R to E again. And this one is ala, and this one is eli. So you could see the transitions. Again, nasal murmur, and how the comes after the M, and you can see it. So that's it for this section, and it will be followed by section 3. Thank you.